When my MOM replaced my dad with her serious new boyfriend, I knew something was wrong.
He made rules, watched me constantly, and left chilling notes. What she didn't know was that I was still secretly talking to my dad, and together, we uncovered a terrifying secret about the man living in our home.
When I was 12, my parents split up.
MOM said Dad was irresponsible and selfish, and that we'd all be better off without him. One day he was there. The next day his side of the closet was empty, and MOM moved us across town like she wanted to erase him from existence. But here's the thing. I never stopped talking to him at first. It was just phone calls.
Dad would borrow a buddy's number or call from a payphone near his job.
He'd tell me dumb jokes, ask about school, and remind me that he loved me. Every time I hung up, I felt a little more alive, like I wasn't being erased along with him. MOM had no idea.
Or maybe she suspected, because she started hovering around me like a prison guard.
She installed one of those old landline phones in the kitchen, only no more cordless sets in the bedrooms. She forgot to pay the cell phone bill, and my cheap prepaid phone disappeared from the drawer where I hid it. Still, I found ways.
At the library, I'd use the payphone near the parking lot.
After school, I'd linger by the corner store where Dad sometimes parked his truck. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Then came the boyfriend. His name was Rick, and from the second I met him, I hated him. He wasn't like my dad.
Dad laughed too loud, hugged too tight, made mistakes but always admitted them. Rick was the opposite: cold eyes, fake smile, hands that lingered too long on my shoulder.
He looked at me like I was in his way. MOM didn't notice. She was smitten.
She called him a real man, said he was stable and serious about family, but when the doors closed, and MOM wasn't looking, he'd mutter things to me like, "You'd better behave."
Your MOM doesn't need more problems. I knew what he meant. I was the problem. One night, I snuck into the garage to grab my hidden phone charger, and Rick caught me.
His face twisted in this half smile, half snarl. "Who you talking to, kid?"
You got a little boyfriend?"
My throat went dry. I just shook my head. He leaned in close enough for me to smell the beer on his breath.
Good.
Keep it that way.
And no secrets in this house. But I had the biggest secret of all. I was still talking to Dad. The more Rick settled into our lives, the worse things got. He started deciding where I could go, what I could eat, even what shows we watched on TV. If I complained, MOM said I was being ungrateful if I tried to push back. Rick just smiled that cold smile and said, "Your dad's not here anymore." I am. I wanted to scream at him that he was wrong. Dad was still here. Not in the house. Not in Mom's bed. But in my life. And then, one night, Dad told me something that changed everything. We were sitting in his truck, parked near the lake where MOM used to take me when I was little. He stared out at the water, drumming his fingers on the steering wheel, before finally saying, "Listen, kiddo, there are things you don't know about Rick. Things I tried to warn your MOM about before she kicked me out."
He's not who he says he is. I blinked at him.
"What do you mean?" Dad turned to me, his face suddenly serious in a way I'd never seen before. "Promise me you'll be careful. Don't tell him you see me. And if he ever tries something, you call me, no matter what." I wanted to ask more, but Dad wouldn't say another word. He just hugged me tight, like it might be the last time, and dropped me 2 streets away from home. That night, as I crept back into the house, I saw Rick sitting in the dark living room. No TV, no lights, just him in a chair, waiting. "Where have you been?" he asked softly. My heart pounded so loud I thought he could hear it. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about MOM moving on. This was about survival. After that night, Rick started watching me more closely. It wasn't just the casual glances anymore. It felt like he was tracking my every move, like a predator waiting for the right moment. He came up with rules for the house. At first, they sounded like normal grown-up stuff. No shoes on the carpet. Dishes washed immediately after eating. Homework done before TV. But then they turned into something darker. Rule number 7. Bedroom does stay open at all times. Rule number 8. No phone calls without permission. Rule number 9. Nobody leaves the house after 7 p.m. MOM thought he was just disciplining me. She'd laugh and say, "Your father never cared enough to set boundaries. Rick's just trying to keep us safe." Safe. That word twisted in my stomach. Safe from what? Meanwhile, my calls with Dad got shorter, more hurried. He sounded restless, like he was carrying the weight of something he couldn't say out loud. One day, I asked him straight up, "Dad, what's wrong with Rick? What aren't you telling me?" There was a long pause on the line. Then he sighed. "I can't explain it all yet, kiddo. Just trust your gut. If he makes you uncomfortable, there's a reason." That wasn't enough. I wanted answers. But Dad shut down the topic every time. Things boiled over the night. Rick found my hidden flip phone. I had tucked it inside a cereal box at the back of the pantry, wrapped in a sock to muffle vibrations. But Rick had this way of sniffing things out. He dumped the box out on the counter while I was doing homework. And there it was. My lifeline to Dad, lying naked on the formica. MOM gasped. But Rick just stared at me, his jaw tight, his eyes shining with something ugly. "Who's the boy?" he asked. I swallowed hard. It's not a boy. Then who? Mom crossed her arms. Answer him, honey. My chest burned.
If I told the truth, Dad would be cut off from me forever. If I lied, Rick might not believe me.
So I said the first thing that popped into my head. It's Sarah, from school. She lets me copy her math homework sometimes. Rick's smile was thin and slow. You're lying. Mom's face turned red.
Why would you lie to us, sweetheart? I'm not,
I yelled.
My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. Rick leaned close enough that I could see the tiny scars on his chin.
No more secrets. You got that. In this house, we tell the truth. He snapped the phone in half with one motion and tossed it in the trash. My stomach twisted like I was going to puke. That night, I cried myself to sleep. Not because of the phone, but because for the first time, I was scared Dad might not be able to protect me. A week later, something strange happened. Mom left Rick in charge while she worked late.
I was in my room, trying to do homework with the door open like the rules said, when I heard him talking on the phone downstairs. His voice was low, but I caught words that made my skin crawl. Yeah, the kid's here.
No, she doesn't know. Just give it time. My stomach dropped.
Who was he talking about? Who didn't know?
I leaned out my doorway, listening. But the moment I shifted, the floor creaked.
Rick stopped talking. A second later,
he appeared at the bottom of the stairs, phone still in his hand. Eyes locked on me. You should be in bed, he said flatly. It's only 8. Then read.
Quietly, I shut the door just to feel safe for 1 second, and 2 minutes later, it slammed open again. Rick stood there, hand on the knob, face expressionless. What did I say about doors? That night, I pushed my dresser against the frame after he left. The next day, I finally told Dad everything. We met at the lake again.
And I spilled it all. The broken phone, the rules, the creepy conversation. Dad's face darkened.
He clenched the steering wheel so hard I thought it might crack. I knew it, he muttered.
I told her.
I told her years ago. What?
Told her what?
I asked. He turned to me, eyes fierce.
Rick isn't just some guy she met at the gym.
He's been around longer than she knows.
And he's dangerous. You need to keep your head down until I figure out what to do. Dangerous how? Dad shook his head. Not yet. Just.
Trust me. When he dropped me off, he gripped my shoulder hard. If he ever touches you, or if you feel like you're in danger, you call me. I don't care what time it is. Understand?
I nodded, but my chest felt tight. Because here's the truth. Rick hadn't touched me. Not yet.
But every time he looked at me with those cold eyes, I knew it was only a matter of time. After Dad's warning, I started paying closer attention to Rick. At first, it was just little things.
He'd flinch when someone mentioned certain towns nearby, or he'd lock the doors 3 times at night like he was hiding from something. Then I noticed how he always avoided cameras. At the grocery store, he'd duck his head near the security monitors.
At Lily's school recital, he refused to sit near the front because he hated crowds. But I caught him glancing toward the parents filming with phones. He was hiding.
From what or who I didn't know, Mom still didn't see it.
To her, Rick was perfect. He bought groceries, fixed the leaky faucet, even cooked dinner sometimes.
He's reliable, she kept saying, like she was trying to convince herself as much as me. Reliable, sure.
Reliable in making my life a nightmare. The rules in the house got stricter. He taped a house schedule on the fridge. Lights out at PM. No visitors without his approval, and even quiet hours where no one was allowed to use the phone, TV, or even the microwave. Mom played along.
Calling it structure, I called it prison one evening.
While Mom was folding laundry in her room,
Rick came and leaned against my doorway. You don't like me much, do you? He asked. I didn't answer. He smirked. That's fine.
You don't have to.
But your Mom does. And that means I'm not going anywhere. I gripped my pencil so hard it snapped. Then he leaned closer and whispered, You'll learn to respect me.
Or else. I wanted to scream, to run, to tell Mom right there.
But the words stuck in my throat. The next day at school, I told my best friend, Sarah, everything. She didn't laugh, didn't call me dramatic.
She just looked scared. You should tell someone, she said.
Like a teacher.
Or the cops. But how?
All I had was a broken phone and a dad nobody believed. That weekend, Dad showed up at one of Ethan's baseball games.
He didn't sit with us. He stayed by the fence, half hidden under a cap, but I saw him. After the game, I ran over. Why are you here? I asked. To check on you, he said. And to remind you you're not crazy. Rick's dangerous. Dangerous how?
I pressed. He lowered his voice.
Because he's not Rick. That's not even his real name. My skin went cold. Dad glanced around nervously. I looked into him. He's changed names at least twice. There's a record stuff your Mom doesn't know about. Assault charges. Restraining orders.
He moves around, reinvents himself, finds women to hook into.
Then he controls them until it blows up. I stared at him, heart racing. So what do we do? Dad sighed. I am working on it.
But until then, keep quiet. Don't let him know you're onto him. Promise me. I promised. But inside, I was boiling. How could MOM be so blind?
That night, things got worse. MOM was out late again, and Rick was in one of his moods. He made me sit at the table while he drank beer and talked. You think you're smarter than me, he slurred. But I know kids like you.
Always scheming, always sneaking around. I clenched my fists under the table. Then he leaned closer, his breath sour.
I'll make sure you behave.
One way or another, for the first time, I thought about running away, just grabbing my backpack, slipping out the window, and finding Dad. But I didn't, because when I went upstairs, there was a folded piece of paper on my pillow.
No one else had been in my room. My blood turned to ice as I opened it. In messy, blocky handwriting, it said, "Still talking to Daddy?"
He won't save you. I froze. Rick was downstairs.
Dad couldn't have written it.
MOM was at work. So who left the note?
And how did they know?
I didn't sleep that night.
I kept staring at the note, running my fingers over the letters like maybe they'd change if I looked long enough. But they didn't.
The words stayed burned into my brain. Still talking to Daddy? He won't save you. I shoved the paper deep under my mattress before MOM got home.
When she peeked into my room to say goodnight, I almost blurted everything out. But Rick was standing behind her in the hallway, arms crossed, watching. His shadow stretched across my floor like a threat. The next morning, I carried the note in my pocket to school. At lunch, I showed it to Sarah. Her face went pale. This is
messed up, she whispered. You need to tell someone. What if he's dangerous? What if?
I snapped, louder than I meant.
A few heads turned, and I lowered my voice.
He is dangerous.
But if I tell anyone, he'll know it was me. And then what? Sarah didn't have an answer. That night, I decided to test Rick.
I mentioned Dad's name casually during dinner.
Just to see his reaction. MOM was telling some story about work, and I interrupted with, Dad used to say that too. For a second, Rick froze. His fork hovered mid-air, his jaw tightening.
Then he forced a smile. Your dad, he said slowly, isn't part of this family anymore.
The sooner you accept that, the better. MOM nodded, sipping her wine like it was gospel truth. But Rick's eyes never left mine. Later, when I was brushing my teeth, he appeared in the bathroom doorway.
No sound. No warning, just his reflection suddenly behind mine in the mirror. You like to test people, don't you?
He whispered. I gripped the sink so hard my knuckles turned white. You think you're clever,
but clever kids get themselves hurt. Then he walked away,
leaving the hall light flickering behind him. That was the moment I stopped doubting Dad.
Rick wasn't just controlling, he was dangerous in ways MOM refused to see. The next weekend, Dad called from a new number and told me to meet him behind the diner of Main Street.
He looked more tired than ever. Hair unshaven, eyes bloodshot. But his voice was steady. I've been digging, he said, sliding a manila folder across the table. Inside were copies of old court documents, police reports, mugshots. Not Rick, not even close. The man in those papers had a different name, but the same cold eyes.
Assault,
harassment, breaking and entering. A restraining order from a woman in another state. My stomach dropped. MOM doesn't know, Dad said.
She wouldn't listen. I tried to warn her when she started seeing him, but she thought I was jealous. By the time I found proof, it was too late.
He was already living with you. Tears burned my eyes.
So what do we do?
Call the police? Dad shook his head.
Without your mom's support, they won't take it seriously.
He hasn't crossed the line yet. Hasn't crossed the line? I almost shouted. He left me a note. He threatened me.
Dad's jaw tightened.
Show me. I pulled the crumpled paper from my pocket.
His face went white as he read it. This isn't just intimidation, he muttered.
He knows I'm around.
He's trying to cut me off from you. I leaned forward.
So what now?
Dad's hand closed into a fist. Now, I make sure he never lays a hand on you. That night, when Dad dropped me off 2 blocks from home, I spotted a figure in the shadows near our driveway.
A tall shape, unmoving, watching. My stomach sank. Rick was standing outside, waiting for me.
Rick didn't say a word when I walked up the driveway that night.
He just stood there, arms folded, his eyes scanning me like he could smell the lie on my skin. Where have you been? He asked finally.
His voice was calm to calm. Library, I said.
My throat was dry. Group project. His eyes narrowed. Funny.
You don't have any books. Before I could answer, MOM pulled into the driveway. She hopped out of the car, arms full of groceries, smiling like nothing was wrong.
You two bonding out here? She asked cheerfully. Rick smiled. The kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Inside, things were tense.
He barely spoke through dinner, just sat there, chewing slowly.
His eyes darting between me and MOM. Later that night, when I went to my room,
I found another note slipped under my pillow. This one said, if you tell her, she'll regret it. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. The next morning, Dad texted me from yet another new number. Meet me after school.
Emergency. I skipped the bus and walked to the diner.
Dad looked worse than ever, like he hadn't slept in days.
He shoved a piece of paper into my hands. It was a missing persons report. A woman, last seen 6 years ago in another state. The man she'd been dating at the time. The same man sitting at our dinner table every night, only under a different name. My blood went cold. Dad leaned in close.
Listen, he's done this before.
Women go missing around him.
He controls, isolates, then they disappear. Your MOM is next if we don't stop him. I wanted to scream.
I wanted to run straight home and drag MOM out of the house.
But before I could say anything, Dad grabbed my hand. Not yet.
We need proof. Police won't act without it.
Tonight, keep your phone close.
If something happens, call me immediately. Got it? I nodded. But fear not at me all the way home. That night was the breaking point. MREM was working late again, and I was in my room, pretending to read, when I heard footsteps in the hall. Slow, deliberate, my door creaked open. Rick stood there. No smile this time. Just that blank, predatory stare. You think you're clever, he whispered.
But I know where you go.
Who you see, and if you ever lie to me again, I'll make sure your MOM pays for it. He stepped into the room, closer, closer, until I could smell the alcohol on his breath. My hands shook, but I remembered Dad's words. Call me if anything happens. I slipped my phone from under the blanket and hit dial. Rick was still talking.
Still threatening, when the sound of tires screeched outside.
A door slammed, then heavy boots on the porch. Dad burst through the front door before Rick could react. What the hell are you doing? Dad roared. Rick spun, face twisted with rage. She's my kid now, not yours. That was enough. Dad lunged, shoving him back against the wall. The crash shook the pictures from the hallway. I scrambled out of the room just as Mom's car pulled into the driveway. She walked in to see Dad pinning Rick against the wall, both of them shouting, the house trembling with fury. Stop it, she screamed. What's happening? I shoved the folder of court papers and the missing persons report into her hands. Look, MOM. He's not who you think he is. Her face drained of color as her eye skimmed the documents. Rick broke free, bolting for the back door, but Dad was faster. He tackled him onto the porch, and within minutes, flashing red and blue lights lit up Willow Creek Drive. The police dragged Rick away in cuffs while neighbors gathered on their lawns. Whispering, MOM stood frozen, clutching the papers, tears streaming down her face, and me. I just stood there shaking, knowing how close it had come. Later, when it was just us, MOM turned to me, voice trembling. You kept talking to your father behind my back. I nodded. Terrified she'd be angry, but she pulled me into her arms instead. Thank God you did. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. Rick was gone. Dad was back. And MOM finally understood the truth. Sometimes, the person you push away is the only one who's been trying to save you all along.